All right, good morning, everyone. All right, that's the most resounding response we've ever gotten from a Norwegian audience. Thank you. So, today we're going to be looking at pwned things. Everyone's heard of IoT, Internet of Things. This is the Internet of pwned things. And I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff that has sort of been personal experiences, because I always think it's more interesting when there's a bit of a story and it's not just like a news article. And a lot of the reason I end up looking at pwned things comes back to running this service here. So who's used Have I Been Pwned before? All right, let's try it the other way. Who's never used Have I Been Pwned? One person. All right, get yourself over there. So Have I Been Pwned is a data breach aggregation service, as 99% of the audience seem to already know. And the idea of it is that when there are data breaches and the data ends up either floating around the web or in the hands of someone who isn't really the owner, but they get it via various ways. They send it to me, I load it into this system, and you can search for it. So you can go in and search your email address. And as of this morning, I have to keep updating this every time I do it, there are 425 different data breaches in there, 9.3 billion records, which is, I still find a bit staggering. Now, when I started, I didn't think that this was going to be a big thing. And in fact, it was just over 6 years ago I put the first tweet out. I said, hey, have I been pwned? It's now up. Search across data breaches. I had about 5 data breaches in there. It's something like 150 million records, and I thought, oh, that's a lot. Now here we are. And it was kind of interesting because I stood it up and I sort of said, okay, come along and put your email address in here. It will be fine. And people were suspicious, right? They were like, this is just going to be some sort of spam generating email harvesting service. But people just really didn't know what to think about it. And what I find is really interesting now that it's been going for 6 years and obviously has become quite well known is just how far the thing has ended up going, the service itself and the places that it's taken me to. So it's gone from, in 2013, people think I'm starting like an email harvesting farm, through to eventually me ending up here in Congress. And this was a really, really weird experience. Like I literally got invited to America to go and testify in US Congress. And when they invited me, I sort of said, you know, I'm Australian, don't you? Like, do you really want me to come and talk to American congressmen and congresswomen? And they're, yeah, it'll be fine. But it wasn't all fine, because one of the biggest problems I had was I didn't actually have any clothes. Because well, okay, let me qualify that. I literally live on a beach in Australia, so I got dressed up for you. Let's just say that much. So everything I'm wearing there, I had to go and buy. I had to buy a suit and a tie and a shirt and all this sort of stuff. Had to buy some shoes, and it started to feel like a really serious affair. And I think many of you know I don't like to be too serious about these things. I want to have a bit of fun. So I wanted to get some cool socks, and I ended up going to Congress with these socks, which now that I look at it, it's like there's these 2 really serious looking dudes next to me, and it's like, here's Troy with these stupid socks. Anyway, the socks, I got them from Sophos, and they say, for those about to code, we salute you. And I thought, okay, that will sort of liven up a little bit, and I didn't think much more about it until recently I discovered you can actually buy a stock photo of my socks from Shutterstock for $199. Now, I have worn the socks today. If anyone would like a free photo of my socks, I can save you $199. So, it's like, how the hell did I get here? It's such a weird thing. And honestly, like every single week, I have one of these moments where it's like, holy shit, how did I end up where this is now? So anyway, along that journey, there's been loads of really, really interesting things I've seen around InfoSec, around data breaches, and around IoT and vulnerabilities with IoT. And I'm going to give you a few good examples in this talk and actually give you some useful stuff as well around how we can secure these things better. And one of the ones which I think was most interesting was these guys. Has anyone got one of these? No? Good. So these are messages you can hug. Now, normally I would go through and explain what a message you can hug is, but I actually found a really cool video that explains it better than what I could have just earlier today. So last minute, I dropped this into the deck. This is what a message you can hug is.
This is an alarming story, especially if you have young children. There's a company that makes this toy called a cloud pet. This is a high-tech stuffed animal. Basically, you can record a voice message, and then the voice you record comes out of the stuffed animal, which sounds cute, except it turns out to be not so secure. More than 800,000 accounts were reportedly very easy to hack into. Someone noticed it and put parents on alert, which is surprising. Who could have guessed giving a kid a stuffed animal with a microphone connected to the internet in it had the potential to go wrong? But the company says none of the voice recordings were tapped into, which is good, but I have to say, I'm not sure I believe that's true.
Now, staying in touch is easy and fun with Cloud Pets. Just record a message and send to the cloud, allowing you to send the message to the Cloud Pet.
This is Yako. I am cute. What is Mommy's social security number?
The Cloud Pets app uses Bluetooth technology to send your messages.
Send me to Melania as gift for little Trump boy.
Best of all, Cloud Pets are always there to listen.
Tell me Daddy's secrets. Does he make naked sex?
Cloud Pets, because you are never safe.
Oh, well, at least they're upfront about that, I guess, huh?
The alarming thing is, like, there's bits of that are very, very close to the truth around this sort of whole monitoring thing. And one of the things I remembered when I watched that video this morning is on the original website being the website that is no longer there because the whole service is dead. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the original website looked like this. And one of the things that Cloud Pets did is incentivized active duty military. So they're like, let us make it easier for military personnel to put a teddy bear with a listening device in their home. Now, I first heard about Cloud Pets when someone popped up and sent me an email and said, hey, look, I've got the Cloud Pets data. And I did what all of you did when I asked about Cloud Pets this morning. I went, what the hell is a Cloud Pet? And I did a little bit of Googling, found out what it was, looked at the data, and the data looked very legitimate. And I've always got this challenge, right? When someone sends me data, I've got to make sure it's actually accurate before it goes into have I been pwned. Otherwise, there's all sorts of problems with misattribution. And just by entire coincidence, I was running a workshop and someone in my workshop had a Cloud Pets account. So I was like, is this your data? And he's like, yep, okay, well, that sorts that out, that's clear. So what had actually happened is Cloud Pets had all of their data in a MongoDB, which is fine. On the cloud, publicly facing, so not in a private network segment, without a password. So I was literally just out there. And what people do is they use things like Shodan just to crawl around the web, find open MongoDB instances, and grab the data. Now, what had actually happened with Cloud Pets is they hadn't so much just grabbed the data as deleted the data and left this message there. Your DB is backed up. Now, so incidentally, they don't back it up. When they put ransoms on MongoDB, they just delete it. Just delete it all. Here's a message, pay the ransom. Send 1 Bitcoin to this address, then send your IP address to this email address. Now, one of the cool things with Shodan, if you've never used Shodan before, it's a search engine for the Internet of Things. It indexes all this sort of stuff. So one of the cool things with Shodan is it also keeps history. And Noel Merrigan, who's doing the talk next door to me at the moment, actually, and I were going through the Shodan logs looking at this, and we found that not only was this message there, 2 other people subsequently came along and changed the Bitcoin address to their own, which I thought was actually kind of ingenious. It's like you can do the crime without necessarily, or get the money without necessarily doing all the crime. Now, one of the things that Jimmy Kimmel said in that video is he said, the company said the voice messages haven't been accessed. The way they structured this is the MongoDB just had huge amounts of JSON data in it, which was effectively all the metadata. All of the voice recordings were sitting in an Amazon S3 bucket, publicly facing, without authentication, but with obfuscated URLs. Identifiers for each one of the WAV files. Now, where do you think you're going to have a reference to the identifier of the WAV file? It's all in the MongoDB. So you could go to the MongoDB, you could get the references, and you could pull the voice messages. And in the blog post I wrote about this, I actually linked through to a voice recording which I made just to make the point that it's all sitting there publicly facing. So then things kind of got worse as well, because what we discovered is that not only were all the voice messages that were recorded from the Cloud Pets sitting up there in the cloud and ultimately accessible, there were other problems with the Cloud Pet as well. Now, the problem is this. You know how you've all connected a Bluetooth thing to somewhere before? Let's say it's your phone to your car. And just to make sure that crazy random strangers aren't connecting to your car, there's an authentication process, right? Like you literally have to see the number come up, enter the number. Are you sure you want to pair these things together? Yes. This didn't have any of that. No authentication to connect your mobile device to the Cloud Pet. And this is what it required too. It's not like the Cloud Pet talked directly to the internet. It had a Bluetooth device, connects to your phone, then your phone connects to the internet. So the value proposition of it is your kid can be sitting at home, recording messages into the Cloud Pet, syncs to your phone, goes up to the cloud, and then like a relative in a faraway location can pull the message down and listen to it. But when there's no authentication on the Bluetooth, it means that anyone within range can connect to the teddy bear. So when this data breach happened and we started digging into it more, one of the things we found is that a researcher had already raised this issue with Cloud Pets. And in fact, there's this researcher, a guy called Paul Stone, works for a company called Context Security. And he did a little video to demonstrate what he could do if he could get within range of a Cloud Pet. So he created this little app and he demonstrated how he could connect to the Cloud Pet and then he can do stuff like make the light blink. Not only that, he could record his own message and he could send this to some little kid's bed.
Exterminate! Annihilate! Destroy!
Imagine your little kids just laying in bed and they come out one day, they go, Mummy and Daddy, I hear voices in bed. And it's like, yeah, sure you do. No, really, this is a Cloud Pet talking like a Dalek. And this was a totally unrelated problem to all the other data it collected and then exposed. So one of the interesting things when we look at IoT and vulnerabilities is there's multiple different layers of vulnerabilities. One of the layers of vulnerabilities is what's all the stuff that these IoT devices collect and then leave exposed. The other is what is the vulnerability with the device itself. And you'll see more examples of this as we go through. Now the challenge too is that for people like myself, when we learn about a data breach or a vulnerability, how do you do disclosure? Because I don't want to just take this and dump it online and the first thing a company hears about it is, hey, your data's on Have I Been Pwned? That may not ultimately work out well for me. I've never been sued. I'd like to keep it that way. I've never even had a proper legal threat. So let's have a look at what we did disclosure-wise. And this demonstrates the pain that we often go through, we being many of us in the security community, trying to disclose. So the guy you just saw, Paul Stone, who did the little Bluetooth demo, back in October, he's trying to contact them and say, hey, your Cloud Pets don't have any security. Now, after this, December, 2 separate people tried contacting them about the exposed MongoDB, couldn't get a reply at all from the company. This is what was exposed, by the way. This is RoboMongo, it's a little browser for MongoDB. Gives you a good idea of the sort of data we're talking about. Stuff here in the user, things like usernames, email addresses, a whole bunch of other personal information that you could use to positively identify the person, and then you know that they've got a Cloud Pet, which means they've probably got a kid. Figure out where they live. You know you can now go and Bluetooth to it and send Dalek messages. So that was what was in the database. After that, database is wiped and ransomed 3 times. Now, the service was working after this. So do you think they knew about it? Of course they knew about it. It's like at some point, all their Cloud Pets stopped working. Oh, there's no data left and there's a ransom message. Let's restore from the backup. So obviously they knew about it. Now then we're getting through to Feb and I'm working with reporters as well, and all these reporters are trying to contact the company saying, hey, you've got data which has been exposed, you need to deal with this. And we're still not getting any responses at all from the company. And eventually a reporter manages to get in touch with the CEO. There's a guy called Mark Myers. Now he's the CEO of a company called Spiral Toys, now dead. Not him, like the company. I don't know, maybe he is. But the company is definitely dead. And eventually a journalist manages to get a response from this guy. And the reason he gave for not replying to the messages is he said, we did have a reporter try to contact us multiple times last week. You don't respond to some random person about a data breach. It's like, mate, that's who reports data breaches. It is random people. It's not like someone you expect to come up and give you a report. It's always random people that are finding your breaches. And this isn't just data like our email addresses and passwords. This is children and children's voices And this is the attitude that many companies have about receiving data breach reports or any vulnerability report. So eventually, this is pretty much what happened to the cloud pets. Because the service went down, they're no longer cloud pets, they're heavy teddy bears. Like that, that's all that's left. It's a teddy bear with a Bluetooth device and some circuitry in it. So they're sitting here in a 99-cent store. They're actually being sold for about $4.99 when I looked at the sticker later on, but they put the sticker over the name so that nobody knew they were cloud pets, and now they're just like basic teddy bears. So that's pretty much killed their business as well, which I think is a really poignant sort of lesson to take from this, because once you get pressed like that, it's very, very hard to get over that. All right, so cloud pets and collecting data. Now, one of the things I find fascinating is that we're starting to get all sorts of really unexpected things connected to the internet. And the other day, I was laying in my pool with my phone, which is what I normally do. This is basically life in Australia. I know it's very different here. So I'm laying in the pool, and as I usually do, I decided to look at the SSIDs around me, the networks. All right, it was exceptional, I was curious. Anyway, I pull up my phone, and I find a network that I haven't previously seen. And I saw this, and I went, this is really unusual. Like, I live in a pretty large house. There's people like one side and the other side. Like, if I'm seeing a network, it's either one of the neighbors right next to me or it's in my house. Why would there be Washer Samsung in my house? What the hell is this? And I'm thinking about it, and I went, did get a new washing machine recently, but it's a freaking washing machine. Like, why is it broadcasting an SSID? And I was very curious, so I got out of the pool and I went to the laundry. And I found the washing machine, and I found that the washing machine has the ability to act as an access point, a wireless access point. Now, when I bought the machine, this was not on the list of priorities of things I was looking for. It's like, does it wash clothes? Yes, okay, I'm good with this. I wasn't looking for internet connectivity. So this struck me as something quite odd. And I thought, you know, like, this would be crazy. Why would you want to connect your washing machine to the internet? So of course I had to do it because I just wanted to know what it did. So what you can do with these Samsung washing machines is you can pull down an app, and the app then gives you instructions on how to connect via Wi-Fi to the access point running the washing machine. Think about this for a moment. Like, this is so like this era, right? My washing machine has an SSID, it's broadcasting it, I can connect to it. I need to use a password of 1111222222. And then I can connect my phone to the washing machine. Now, at this point, like, I got no idea. What am I going to do once I actually connect to the washing machine? And I'm fascinated because I really can't see the value proposition in this. Once you connect to it, the mobile app will then tell you which other networks are around the washing machine. So this is now the washing machine looking for networks around it. Now, you'll see I've got a whole bunch of networks here. But actually, the first thing that really struck me when I saw this is, why isn't my washing machine compatible with 5 gigahertz networks? If I had known this when I bought it, I wouldn't have got it. Obviously, you want a 5G compatible washing machine. Only 2.4 gigahertz? But then again, that does have more range, doesn't it? So I don't know, how much throughput do you need on a washing machine over your Wi-Fi? I had so many questions going around inside my head. Now, you'll see a bit of a pattern here in the networks, and there's sort of two outliers. So these are all the different networks that the washing machine can see. Now, I can see one here called Irvingdale. I know what that is. That's my neighbour on this side. I set up their network, so I know exactly which one it is. And this one, I assume, is the neighbour on the other side. Every one of these other networks is mine. And you might be looking at this going, why do you need about a dozen different networks? So, first of all, you know it's my network because I literally called the SSID HTTP 403, which is forbidden, because I thought it was funny. And you'll see that I've got HTTP 403 and HTTP 403 IoT. Now, I'm going to talk about the IoT stuff later on. But one of the things that will obviously stand out here is that I've got the same HTTP 403 network 6 times, and then the IoT one 6 times. So why do I have like a dozen different networks all in my home? Reason why is because this is the Wi-Fi that I run in my home. So this is Ubiquiti. Is anyone running any Ubiquiti equipment? All right, cool. This is cool. So let's talk about ubiquity because it's super, super awesome and it's going to lead into the discussion about isolating networks and IoT devices. So Ubiquiti is actually the largest manufacturer in the world of wireless access points. You very frequently see them in places like cafes, stadiums, really big rollouts, a lot of corporate environments. And what we're looking at here is what you'd probably call their prosumer line. And it's part of what they call their Unify suite of products. And what it does is imagine when you have like one of those like shitty little Netgear routers or something like that, and there's one plastic box. What this does, it sort of decomposes it into all little parts. So I had a lot of bad Wi-Fi, and I was willing to just throw money at the problem. So I bought lots and lots of different access points. So these 5 discs you see at the top are all different wireless access points. And then I bought 2 8-port switches, bottom left and bottom right. I bought this one just here, which is a security gateway. So this sits in between the modem and the home network. It does all the DHCP, things like that. And I bought this little guy here, which is a cloud key, and this runs all the controller software. So you know when you connect to your home router and there's a web interface and you can configure it. This runs that. And again, this is effectively like a decomposition of the stuff that you run in your homes already. Now, all of these wireless access points operate in what's referred to as a mesh network. So you can put them around different places in the house, but normally it just appears as one network. Now, I say normally because if I pull out my phone and look at my networks at home, I'll see HTTP 403 and HTTP 403 IoT. For some reason, my washing machine considered each one to be a separate network. It wasn't able to sort of see that they were all the same thing. And again, I was disappointed because this wasn't on the brochure when I bought it. So this is what I've got, and this is why we see so many different network points. Now, one of the cool things about this is that each one of these devices can operate over a wired backhaul, or they can be extended wirelessly. So my house is wired for Ethernet, so I just put one of these in different corners of the house. They all get wired back to the switch like this. If I had one, and incidentally, this switch, they all support power over Ethernet as well, so you don't need a power point for these. You just run it over Ethernet straight into the device. If I wasn't near an Ethernet jack, I can use a PoE injector, which can plug it into the power point, gives it power, and then it can wirelessly connect to another device and rebroadcast the same SSID. Now, what's really cool is when you wire all of this up, you get diagrams, which is really neat. So this is what my network looks like. And it's really cool to sort of follow the line down. So there's a security gateway I spoke about before. That plugs into a patch board. I actually then have the master bedroom one running into there. I put a wireless one near my barbecue, and then I put another wireless one at the jetty next to my jet ski. So when I was on the jet ski, I had full Australian problems. So, but this is the cool thing, right? And you can see there's sort of a distribution of clients across them because I've got them all over the place, and the clients are just connecting to the fastest possible one. So, getting back to the washing machine, I thought, okay, let's connect the washing machine to the network, to the IoT network. We're going to talk about how to set that up in a moment. And then we'll see what happens. Because I was really curious, once I connect my washing machine, what new features am I going to get that I didn't have before? And I learned that if you connect a washing machine to the internet, you can get a push notification when you open the door. And I was like, this is really handy. It's like, I'm going to go wash my clothes. And you open the door and say, oh, thank you for letting me know. And even recently, it's like I've been here on the other side of the world and the cleaner's been in the house or something like that. And it's like, oh, well, I guess the washing's getting done. That's handy to know. I haven't found much value beyond this, if I'm completely honest. But I guess the thing that sort of struck me is, how much do I trust my washing machine? I know it's a really odd question outside the context of internet, but how much do I trust the washing machine not to do something screwy and introduce a vulnerability to my network? And just for context, like this happens a lot. We see IoT devices introducing vulnerabilities. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. This is a Lifex light bulb. Who's got connected light bulbs? All right, so we've got things like Philips Hue, for example. Anyone got Lifex? Oh, this is going to be fun. So, Lifex, which incidentally is an Aussie brand as well, so I'd like to be supportive of them. But Lifex have had some problems. And one of the problems that LiftX had a few years ago is it turns out that they would reveal the Wi-Fi password of your network. And this image here is obviously a discarded LiftX light bulb. So imagine you're finished with the light bulb, you go, I'm done with this, I chuck it in the bin. I've now got a piece of what's effectively e-waste sitting there with the password of the network in clear text. So now if anyone else picks it up and they get that password, someone drives by your house, they're now on your network. So this is why I say I'm sort of alarmed, because then I was thinking, well, what happens when I throw the washing machine out? Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's 10 years from now. How long does a washing machine last? Something like that. Is it gonna then effectively provide some sort of a pinhole back to my network? Now the byline here was interesting. They said, your Internet of Shit smart light bulb is probably storing your Wi-Fi password in the clear, ready to be recovered by wily dumpster divers. And Internet of Shit is a term that we're seeing come up over and over and over and over again now. And in fact, if you go to Twitter and you search for Internet of, you'll see there is actually an Internet of Shit account. There are other Internet of Things accounts we're not going to go into detail on right here. Later on when you get home, look it up because it's absolutely fascinating. So, we're connecting a lot of Internet things to our network. Now the question is, we want to do this because we're geeks, right? There's always this two halves of my brain. It's like little things on each shoulder where there's one part of it which is going, this is ridiculous. A Wi-Fi washing machine is probably going to cause problems. And then there's the thing on my other shoulder going, this is really cool. You can connect your washing machine to the internet. So let's talk about how to do this and give you some protection at the same time. So what I've done with my Ubiquiti network is gone through and created a dedicated network for IoT. So you can see I've called it IoT. This is the whole Unify administration panel. I've given it a VLAN ID of 2, so it has its own VLAN, so its own logical network. Runs on its own subnet as well. It's running on 192.168.2.1 instead of 1.1, which most home networks run on. So there's this individual network which we can now apply policies over. Now I can then go down to routing and firewall, which then allows me to start defining rules about how these networks can interact with each other. And I went through and said, look, I'm going to create a rule here. It's going to be block IoT to private. I do not want IoT being able to see private. I do want to be able to see the other way because I want to have my phone, which is on my private network, be able to see my washing machine, because otherwise how will I know when the door's open? So we do that. I went through and said, look, I'm going to drop all IPv4 protocols. You can say, look, do I want to just drop TCP, UDP, etc. And then a little bit further down, I define the inbound network and the outbound network. So you can go through and create these very, very sort of fine-grained network permissions. So that's a network and the firewall rules. The next thing you want is you want another wireless logical network. So here's where I go through and say, look, let's create another one. SSID is going to be HTTP 403 IoT. That's going to be enabled. I'm then going to go through and say, please use VLAN 2 for this. So this is what ultimately ends up allowing me to have one network for my private stuff and one network for all the IoT stuff. And then I've got another network at home which is just for guests, and that one also has the guest policies enabled, and it's got a little captive portal with some information on it. So this is a really, really neat way of setting it up. And when I then go back and look at my network, this is the iPad app, I can go through and see all the different devices that are on the network, and we'll see things like the Amazon Echo, that's on HTTP 403 IoT, the Apple TV is on IoT, the HydroWise irrigation system is on IoT. Now, you'll see the HydroWise here, and you might look at it and go, isn't this just akin to like connecting your washing machine? Like, why would you need to connect an irrigation system to the network? And this is actually one of these cases where, believe it or not, it makes sense. And the reason why is because the irrigation system is able to look at the weather forecast. And if it sees it's about to rain, then it won't turn the irrigation on. Because in Australia, we often have drought. Many of you would have seen we've got fires and things like that at the moment, largely because of drought. So this is a case where it makes sense. So I get this really, really cool view here, and I can access this from anywhere in the world too. It all integrates back into the Unifies portal. And I can see here that it's actually connected to the access point in the study. My irrigation system also seems to favor 2G, whatever. And then I get this nice breakdown of what is IoT and what is on the primary network. Now, if I move on and have a look at my washing machine, I can start to get stats. Washing machine is connected to the entertainment room because the laundry is on that side of the house. That's the most convenient network. Let's have a look at what my washing machine is actually doing, because now I can do things like deep packet inspection. Now, hopefully the washing machine is communicating securely over HTTPS. What a time to be alive. But what it can see is the host names it's connecting to and the protocols it's using. So I can see that my washing machine has pulled down 77.7 kilobytes worth of data. And I have no idea how any of this is useful whatsoever, but it just seems cool, right? To be able to get all of this information on all of your devices. So that's ubiquity in the Unify range. If anyone's looking at this and saying, this is really cool, but I don't know that I want to spend the money buying all those different parts, so to put that in Norwegian NOK, it's probably about 15,000 NOK to buy all the bits that were there before. What you can do these days is you can go and get one of these. It's called a Dream Machine. So they only just launched this last year. And the Dream Machine is all the things you saw before, all bundled up into one device. So this is a combination of the access point, the cloud key, the controller, and the router as well, and you've got obviously 4 wired Ethernet ports there too. Now these are more like about 3,000 NOK. So these are a really, really cool idea. They did send me one. I got one sitting at home. I'm going to go and set it up for a family member as soon as I get home. So I'll write a blog post about this hopefully in the next few weeks. But these look super cool. So if you want to have a cool network at home where you can actually configure all these things like dedicated IoT network, I reckon this is the best way to do it. Now, that would have been the end of the story with the washing machine. Except when I came away to Norway last month, I found that the washing machine had created another problem for me. I was over in Big Day, near the Viking Museum. You guys will know where that is. And I was at this convenience store, and I was buying some groceries, and I'm at the checkout, and I do what all of us do whilst you're waiting for anything, which is you pull your phone out. And I had no internet connection, and I look at it, and I'm connected to a wireless network. I'm like, why the hell am I connected to a wireless network in a convenience store on the other side of the world? So I go to my Wi-Fi settings, and I'm connected to a washing machine. And I'm like, why am I connected to a washing machine? Now note also, this is an encrypted network, right? It's got the padlock. So why does this happen? It's the same brand washer, but it's also the same pre-shared key. So I would hazard a guess that that password we saw before, 1111122222, is probably the same everywhere, and it's probably the same pre-shared key in every single washing machine. So this was just before Christmas. And I'm at the store going, wow, this is just amazing. Yeah, this will probably never happen again. Anyway, I go home for Australia, and then I come back here again, and a couple of weeks ago, I'm in this Airbnb. And this was my 10-year-old son. Because we're from Australia, he's never seen heated floors before. So when he saw this, he goes over the control panel and he's just like pumping it up as far as, but we got it up to 40 degrees, and then he's just like laying on the tiles. And while we're in this Airbnb, this comes up. I'm trying to access my email and it says, hang on a moment, you're connected to a washing machine in an apartment. So now what's happening is I'm sort of wandering around the world just connecting to like random washing machines. I wonder if you can start them from the app, because if you can start them, ooh, that might get interesting. So this is part of the problem, because of course with most devices, once you connect to a network, you've got the little thing which says remember network, which is what most people do for convenience. So I'm wandering around continually connecting to networks. Now I'm an iPhone user. Does anyone know how to remove a network that you've connected to before when you can't see the network? I don't care about Android. Well, the problem with iOS is that you can't. Actually, you can. There are two ways. You can remove every single network you've ever connected to before, or you can factory reset. Like literally erase the whole thing. You cannot go back. Like I can't pull out my phone now and go, okay, I'm going to find like Washer Samsung and remove that network so I don't have the problem again. So now I'm just like stuck connecting to washing machines around the world, and then every time I do connect to it, I could tell it to forget it then, but then I'm like, well, this is actually kind of cool and it makes good talk material, so maybe I'll just leave it there. So multiple different ways connecting things like washing machines to the internet pose challenges as well as a bit of joy for me, because I do find this quite funny. All right, so far I have not seen anything go wrong with the washing machine, so that's good. But I do want to talk about something that did go really, really wrong. And I'm going to start by talking about a friend of mine. So this is a guy called Ken Munro, and Ken runs a company called Pentest Partners in the UK. So they're a penetration testing firm, and they find a lot of really, really interesting vulnerabilities with things like ships. You know, this is not just like small-time stuff. It's like, we would like to get like a container ship and find vulnerabilities with it. As you can see here, he's a TED speaker as well, so he's a very notable guy. He's a very nice guy. And he got in touch with me about April last year and said, look, we've been looking at the security of kids' smartwatches, and we found a lot of them are absolutely terrible, security-wise. Now, smartwatches for kids in this context are watches that are not only digital and connected, but they have GPS trackers in them. So this is for parents who are worried about their children and they want to be able to see where they are at all times. And he had done a lot of work with the Norwegian Consumer Protection Council here, and a lot of material got released in late 2017 saying, look, these things are just terrible, don't use them. US followed suit. So in the US, there was a lot of information about, look, these watches have consistent problems. Germany banned them completely. We'll talk about why they banned them completely later on. So Ken got in touch with me because he said, look, we've just noticed this Australian company. It's an Australian company called TikTok Track. They're selling these watches as well. We reckon they're terrible. You're in Australia. Let's have a look. So this is the watch that watches out for them. Now, I just realised they don't tell you here who is able to watch out for them, and I think maybe that's part of the key message which is missing. But he said, look, can you go to the website, buy one of these watches, and we'll see what's wrong with it. So I went to the website, and I'm always curious when I go to a website, how much can I tell about the security posture of the company? And when I went there, I saw they had a padlock, so I knew it would be okay. It's not how it works. And the other thing that really struck me actually is this sentence here. We take the security of your data seriously. You know where I usually see that sentence? In data breach notifications. It's like, dear customer, we take the security of your data seriously. By the way, we lost all your data. So that's where I normally see that statement. The other thing I found interesting is the first sentence there. Software is custom built and securely hosted in Brisbane, Queensland. Now, when I think about places in the world which would be the most technologically advanced and secure, I don't think of Brisbane, Queensland. Now, I come from Queensland. I'm down the road from Brisbane. If we're talking about beaches, it's like, okay, yeah, that'd be Brisbane, Queensland. But no, not security. And one of the things that was really interesting about this company is they reiterated over and over and over again about how Aussie it is. What they don't tell you is that the watch is made in China, which is not a problem. I have a watch that's made in China. It's just got an Apple logo on it. And all the software was built in Sri Lanka. They don't tell you that either. Just doesn't have the same narrative as Aussie owned and made. So anyway, I'm looking through the website and I'm sort of going, this does not feel good. Like, it feels like the sort of thing that's going to have problems. You would be crazy to get one of these and put it on your kid. So anyway, I got one I put on my kid. And this is my daughter, Elle. So she's 7 years old. I got the watch, put it on Elle. She desperately wanted a pink one, so she got a pink one. You'll see the watch actually says Gator. Now, Gator is made by a Chinese company, which again is fine. But what they do is they make the device, and then they ship the device, and other people make the APIs that talk to the device, and they make the mobile apps. So you can have Gator watches all the way around the world, but they've all got different interfaces and different APIs. Now, what you can't tell from this picture is that the size of the watch is actually about this big, right? It is massive. And one of the reasons it's so massive is that it takes a physical SIM. So it's not like an eSIM, like one of these watches. And of course, it's a cheap plastic device made for children. One of the things I haven't mentioned in these talks before is we did this story by sending her down to the tennis club. She's wearing this in the morning. By the end of the day, the entire thing was scratched up because she'd fallen over once and it was now a mess. And I was kind of like, oh, I feel really bad about that, but it kind of demonstrates the point of these being just cheap mass market devices. So anyway, we put this on Elle and we start to have a look at the network traffic that both the watch and the mobile API is sending backwards and forwards. And we start to have a look at the APIs. Now, this was the first API we looked at. So this API had the ability to get users, and then it passed an OData filter. You see it says family identifier equals 3497. Now, because Ken's a smart guy and he can count, all he did is change the number. Got another family. That was it. It's not like there was no authorization whatsoever. There was authorization. It worked like this. Are you logged in? Yes? Okay, cool, go for it. Get whatever family you like. There was no control whatsoever. So this is just insecure direct object references, IDORs. And it's like one of the most basic, well-known vulnerabilities ever. And they keep happening over and over and over again. Some of you might have seen me talk about the Nissan Leaf application in previous talks. Exactly the same thing, IDOR. So that was it. Just this little number up here. And the interesting thing about this as well is that during this whole process, journalists got involved because it became a big story. You know, it's children, all this sort of thing. And the journalists were asking the CEO, they said, can you tell us how many of these watches you've sold? Because we want to know how many Aussie families have been impacted. And they said, we can't tell you that. That's commercial in confidence information. And I'm looking at this going, I reckon I know how many you've sold. so like, if this is sensitive information, don't put it in your APIs, which are easy for people to discover. So this was the first problem. Now, here's the other problem. And this is not somewhere we went at the time, but this is an OData query with a filter. I wonder what would happen. And this is all we did. We wondered. So because he is a very stand-up guy, Ken, we didn't play with that. We literally created 2 accounts, logged in with one, so see if we can access the data of the other. So we didn't have to. But I think it would be a pretty reasonable assumption that if you dropped off that filter, you would get their entire customer base. Now, again, they can't tell us how many people are in there, but we'd probably get 3,497 people. All right, so this is one of the APIs. Now, there's another API here. Oh, actually, sorry, this is the response, first of all. So when you call that API, you get this response. You'll see there's a whole bunch of personal data here. There's me, it's me. And again, because this is just from an enumerable identifier, you would be able to go through and just keep adding one and just pulling down the entire subscriber base. All right, so that's getting a family. Next one, getting a child. Now, the first thing that upset me about this is that you're getting a child with a post request. What is wrong with these people? There's a constant thread across a lot of these IoT things of just like the incorrect HTTP verbs being used. But anyway, you get yourself a child by passing a family ID, exactly the same vulnerability. You can relocate a child. And when you think about it, there has to be an API to do this, right? And post is post or put to relocate a child. Anyway, it's probably one of those. So when you think about it, like you need this functionality because this is the API the watch calls. So the watch inevitably polls this API, let's say every 60 seconds, and says, I'm here, no, I'm there, no, I'm there, no, I'm there. And whilst I was looking into this, I always sort of try and think about, you know, what would an attacker be doing? So what would someone with bad intent be doing and how would they circumvent the controls? And when I was thinking about it, it's like, this watch is there to track a child's movements, so the parent always knows where the child is and they can tell if they're being kidnapped or something like that. If I was an attacker, I'd just take the watch off and then I'd kidnap the child. So how does the watch work? It just seems like the most obscure, bizarre thing. I think this sort of thing is particularly popular in places like Australia and the US. In Norway, I think everyone's pretty much like just free-range children. You know, let them run free, they'll work it out, don't worry. But yeah, that was odd. So anyway, relocate a child. Now, what we decided to do then is, okay, let's actually have a look at what we could do if we can exploit this feature, because all of these just take the family ID and you can put the kid wherever you want. So we sent Elle back to tennis camp and I go home and I open up the mobile app. So this is the mobile app and we can see that Elle is here, she's at the tennis club in Southport. And I, as a helicopter parent, so a parent that always wants to know everything about the kids, I know she's safe. And then Ken dumps her in the ocean because he can call that API and he can position her wherever he wants her to be. And then it got worse because this is effectively a mobile phone. It takes a 3G SIM card. It has a speaker, it has a microphone. And it has it so that the child can communicate with the parent and the parent can communicate with the child. But it would be weird if just anyone could call the child. So they built an API so that you can set the phone number of the parent. Now, you never guess how you authenticate to the API. You pass a family ID. So what we decided to do is test it out. So Ken got one of his colleagues, there's a guy called Vangelis. He's a Greek guy. You're going to hear him in a moment. He's got a really strong accent. So he set Vangelis as a parent. And then we set Al up in bed here, and Vangelis calls her.
Hello, Al.
Hi, who are you?
I am Vangelis from the other part of the world.
So holy shit, that feels like, even I was there obviously, but it feels scary when you watch that again. You know, imagine a stranger being able to call your kid while they're sitting there in bed. It's the weirdest thing. And here's the other thing that was really weird. Did you see what she had to do to answer the call? Nothing. Zero interaction. This is why they got banned in Germany, because they are treated as surreptitious listening devices. Zero interaction, and you can start listening to the environment around you. And again, like I kind of went to this dark place, because I'm thinking, why would you do that? Maybe it's so that if she gets kidnapped and she's tied up in the back of a van somewhere, you can still call them. And I was just, really, is this the thing that we're worried about? Is this the thing that we're going to like jeopardize our kids' own privacy for some really obscure, far-fetched fantasy? So they ended up taking the service offline as soon as we reported it, to their credit. They had to then go and explain to the public what had gone wrong. Obviously, no one's watches then worked for a period of time. And then they eventually came back online and got a whole bunch of tests and other things done for them. But for me, the thing that I always come back to is as soon as you connect anything like this to the internet, you will always have a risk. And regardless of how many assurances you get about security, there's always going to be a risk. And time again, since then, we've seen other watches that do the same thing have exactly the same vulnerabilities. So if anyone's using one of these and thinking it's not going to have a problem because the company says it's fine or they've tested it, yeah, that's delusional. Time and time again, they'll pop back up. All right, so one more thing whilst we're talking about IoT. And I wanted to try and find a good example of like just how weird connected stuff is getting and like how far it's going and where we're getting vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities in places that we never expected to have them. So I thought I'd pick this. And this is a very new IoT device, which is a connected toilet. It's a real thing. It's a Lixil Satis. It's made by the Japanese. Now, if you've ever been to Japan, you will know that that is the home of all weird toilet things. And it's fascinating because you can actually Bluetooth your phone to the toilet. Now, it's unclear to me what you do once you actually Bluetooth the device to the toilet. And I can only imagine some of the things you could get out of it. But I saw this popping up a little while ago, and I saw that there's this, this new device. It's connected to the phone. Sooner or later, this is going to have security vulnerabilities. And I was talking about it a little while ago in talks. I said, one day we're going to see this. This will be in the news. There'll be problems with it. And believe it or not, there has been a security vulnerability with the toilet. What happens? First of all, actually, I forgot about this one. This is important. This is what the mobile app does. Now, because it's all in Japanese, we've all just got to sort of guess a little bit about what it means. This is obviously a splash screen of some kind. Well, thank you, one person. This one, event-driven data of some kind. You know what? I showed this once, and I did actually have someone who was Japanese in the audience, and they translated it for me later on. I honestly can't repeat what these things are. And this is what I find particularly hilarious, and maybe this is just like Japanese sense of humor. This is a music player, and it literally has the toilet playing I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Honestly, go and Google this, Lixil Satis. That's real. I didn't doctor that. So anyway, I'm having this discussion with people. I'm saying, look, sooner or later, we're going to have security vulnerability with this. And wouldn't you know it, TrustWave came out with an advisory. And they said attackers could cause the unit to unexpectedly activate the bidet or air dry functions, causing comfort or distress. Discomfort or maybe it would cause comfort. I don't know. Because it has no Bluetooth authentication, same as the Cloud Pets. I did actually show this at a talk recently, and someone in the audience said, yeah, that's a backdoor attack. All right. On that note, I have left us a bit of time as well. We've got about 10 minutes left in case anyone has questions about basically anything except for the last slide. Any questions? Yeah. Would you be able to turn off the ringing tone on the watch? You don't have a lot of configurability on the watch. So no, I'm not sure, but I guess the thing is, like, that's part of the value proposition as well. Like, parents are buying it so that they can call the child. Oh, so could the attacker disable the ringtone? I wonder if there's an API for that. Maybe. I don't know. And keep in mind as well, this is just one watch of many other similar ones that have had similar vulnerabilities. And if you do a Google for it, what's your Norwegian Protection Council called? It's like Fortabruker or... All right, the word I can't say. If you Google them and smartwatches, you'll see a great big paper they've written on it. It's really interesting. It's all the same sort of stuff, but it was about 18 months before this incident. Other questions?
What's your take on the Sonos backlash that just popped up?
Oh, this is the one where, so Scott was telling me about this the other day. So Sonos have basically discontinued support for every speaker older than, what, 7 or 9 years or something?
Yeah, and then they also do that. We can give you a new one with the rebate if you let us break your old one, so it's completely reusable.
Wow, okay. So this is Sonos, like the in-ceiling kind of Sonos things that people spend a lot of money in their homes for. Yeah, but you get a rebate so you can get new ones, but you still got to spend money.
But on the positive side, I probably wiped the Wi-Fi address while I'm breaking it, right?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe. I think it's just going to be sort of more a consumer backlash thing because you've spent money on something and now they've literally disabled it because it sounds like they just won't work at all, right?
Yeah, but the thing is that they just announced that we're not going to publish security updates for these anymore as well, and that won't prevent people from using them.
Yeah.
They go for the brick and rebate.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if they stick to that opinion because we've certainly seen companies go down similar routes in the past and then they get so much consumer backlash, they're like, ooh, maybe I won't do that. But then again, it's like once it gets that old, is it going to become like the Windows XP of home speakers? You know, like, do you really want Windows XP like running in your ceiling for the next 10 years or something? But I think there's a bigger issue, and it's almost like I'm going to have the same issue with the washing machine. What happens when I've got decade-old software in my washing machine that's talking to the internet? Will it still work? Yeah, I don't know. Does it self-update? So like I come in there one day and my washing machine's just got a new feature? It's like it suddenly starts drying as well, or I don't know. Yeah. Can you have a separate network? Oh, you mean run it on a different channel? Yeah, you can run on a different channel because it's another wireless network set on a different channel. You should be able to. Scott, have you done that before? Yeah, okay.
I think you're limited to 5 or 6 different Wi-Fi networks.
I mean, there must be some logical point at which it just goes, no, you're just trying to broadcast too many networks. But you know, if you start getting to that point as well, I think that there's a discussion to be had about what gives you security yet is still practical, because there's a point at which it's like, this is just becoming painful. Now, a good example, I used to always have whitelisting of MAC addresses. It's like, unless this MAC address is whitelisted, I'm not going to allow it on. That just got painful because I end up with so many devices, it's like I've got to remember to whitelist it, and then I got rid of the phone, so I've got to take that off the whitelist. And yeah, I think just whack them all on that same network, like Scott said, client isolation as well is a good thing, which you can do with devices like the Ubiquity stuff, but probably not a lot of the cheapy consumer stuff. Yep.
I noticed you had your coffee machine. What would you do?
Ah, shit. All right, so here's why my coffee machine's connected to the network. I've always laughed at this thing because I've seen things like connected toasters. And like, what is the point of having a connected toaster? Because unless it's like literally putting the bread in for me, I have to be physically present to do anything with it. Plus, once it pops, I want to be there because it'll go cold otherwise. The coffee machine is a Wemo switch. So it's just a Wemo power switch. And the reason I have it is because the coffee machine, it's like one of those full-on barista kind of jobs. It takes probably a good 15, 20 minutes to warm up. I've got a Wemo switch on a timer, so it turns on at like 4 o'clock every morning because I get up early. So by the time I come downstairs, it's nice and warm. I don't open that Wemo switch back out to the public internet. You can. It's just on the internal internet. I could probably put like a non-internet connected one on there, but it just made my graph look cooler. But yeah, that's all it does. It literally just turns on the power. No, that's all I can say at the moment. No. Stay tuned, but no. And the reason why is that when we went through this process, there's always a discussion about what's a responsible level to go to in order to demonstrate a vulnerability. Now, for Ken, because he is a very stand-up, honest guy, he said, look, all we need to do is show that we can authenticate as one person, access someone else's data. That's all we need to do. If we can do that, it demonstrates the vulnerability. And that was sufficient without impacting the privacy of anyone. The bit that I hesitate about here, and ultimately this did go public and people got notices and things, it's fine. Very often you'd see someone behaving responsibly like that and then the company saying, we're not going to disclose, we're not going to be public about it. So you get a whole bunch of security people, often on the shadier end, who just literally pull down all the data. They pull down all the data, they send it to me, they put it on Pastebin, because time and time again they say, we felt that unless we did this, the company wouldn't take it seriously. And the sad thing about it is they're right. Very, very often the company doesn't take it seriously. So VTech Toys, a Hong Kong-based toy maker, in about 2015, they had these little children's tablets that exposed millions of kids' names, kids' photos, parents' data as well. And they literally went full disclosure, public, dumped the data. In fact, they sent it to a journalist who sent it to me, and that they did that because they said if we didn't do that, we didn't think they'd take it seriously. That guy then got arrested. So you don't want to end up there either. But no, the answer is it's not in Have I Been Pwned. No one has ever sent me the full data set. At that point, back in April last year, all we did is just verify that the data was accurate. Yes, yeah. There's other personal data in there. Any other questions? Yep. Have I ever been impressed with the security measures from IoT firms? They don't tend to be memorable, the ones that actually do a good job. Look, they're sort of, I guess, impressed at different levels. If we talk about, I mean, imagine things like the Apple Watch. You know, the amount of security that goes into these things and the number of people looking at them. I mean, I think these are massively impressive devices. The same with Google's devices as well. Every now and then there's a little thing that pops up, but for the most part, they've been really, really resilient. I think one of the things that sort of impresses me most these days is how companies deal with security incidents. So I think we've got to get to a point where we all acknowledge that shit happens and you are likely to have a security incident at some point in time. And around about the time I did the congressional testimony, my mindset kind of changed to the point where I think most people now are judging companies less by the fact they had a data breach and more by the way they handle it. And that was around the time of the Uber incident, where that came out in the news. They'd had a breach a year ago. They tried to pass it off as a bug bounty. They covered it up. People got really upset. Uber later got fined pretty heavily as well. People are much more interested now in how you deal with it. So companies like, I wrote a blog post about the Australian Red Cross Blood Service. They had their entire database backup sitting there publicly facing. Someone sent it to me. I was in there. That company dealt with it amazingly well. Just such a good job of it. So now we look at them and go, okay, that's like the high watermark. All right, one more. Yep. How do I feel about GDPR? Oh, I had such high hopes for GDPR, and now all I see is cookie warnings everywhere. Look, I think the intent of it is really well. The thing I lament about GDPR is the number of people that just try to use it as a hammer and they see everything as a nail. So the number of times I see someone, they'll tweet something like, hey, such and such a company just accidentally CC'd their entire user base on an email. Now you're going to get fined 4% of your annual gross worldwide turnover. It's like, no, you're not. That's not what it's there for. I think it's also interesting to see how the extraterritoriality is applying, because I've seen a lot of data breaches, particularly things like data aggregators in the US, where there'll be a breach and then people in Europe like, oh, I've got GDPR, you're fucked now. And then what happens is the local data regulator or the local DPA ends up saying, look, they're in America, it's too hard, sorry. So, but then again, in America, we're getting CCPA in California now, which has got similar legislation. So hopefully we sort of start to get the world a bit more aligned, but I think it's just way, way too early to actually see practical good out of it. I'll leave you with one fun GDPR story, because a lot of GDPR can be a bit depressing, but this bit's really fun. So I was working with a guy, in fact, we did a Pluralsight course on the things that we were learning since GDPR hit. And this guy was the data protection officer for EasyJet, which is one of Europe's biggest brands. And he said, people consistently, fundamentally misunderstand the intent of GDPR. And he said, I'll give you a good example. In the UK, the police departments are getting a lot of requests for right to erasure, because you should be able to erase your data. So what's happening is people who've gotten speeding tickets are contacting the police and say, I would like to exercise my right under GDPR. You need to delete all my data. And they're like, nah, it doesn't work that way. All right, thanks very much, everyone.